Before time existed and the worlds were formed, all things existed solely as one. One spirit, one breath, one eternal thought. This thought existed only in the present, and therefore there was only the present, and thus this thought spanned all time, aware only of itself as everything and nothing. The universal breath, forever breathing in, forever breathing out. The One has always existed, and therefore it will always exist. Because it has always been, it has no maker. Never made, it will never be unmade. Called by some the eternal Tao, it is the unnameable name, the unutterable sound, the prime source of all that is and will ever be. And thus, for an immeasurable time it existed alone, darkness within darkness, at one with the eternal inhalation and the eternal exhalation. Until suddenly, from the stillness, the eternal and ever-present thought had the will to move. And as the eternal thought stirred to consider itself, the One suddenly became two. As the eternal fire, the ever-present prime source of heaven was joined by heavenly thought, and thus the Father God became aware of the Mother God. And when the fire and thought of heaven in union breathed, their child, their only child, was born. This child is divine love, which humanity has called the Christ. And so the Father, who is the fire or force of heaven, is known as divine will, while the Mother, who is the divine thought or wisdom of heaven, is called the Holy Breath. And their child, which is divine love, is known as the Christ. Thus the triune God stands forth, whom seekers and sages call Father, Mother, and Child, divine will, wisdom, and love. This triune God is one, but like the one of light, in essence it is seven. For when the triune God breathed forth, lo, 7 spirits stood before his face. These are the Elohim, whom men call the lesser gods, the creative spirits of the universe. And these are they who in their boundless power created everything that is or ever was. And they said, "Let us give to man the gift of life." And in their image man was made. These spirits of the triune God moved on the face of boundless space, and 7 ethers were, and every ether had its form of life. These forms of life were but the thoughts of God, clothed in the substance of their etheric planes. Men call these planes the planes of protoplast, of earth, of plant, of beast, of man, of angel, and of cherubim. These planes, with all their teeming thoughts of God, are never seen by eyes of material-minded man. They are composed of substance far too fine for human eyes to see. For it is with this substance that the souls of all life on the 7 planes are created. And all creatures who learn to see with eyes of soul may see these ether planes, and thus they may learn to see all forms of life. Because all forms of life on every plane are thoughts of God, all creatures think. And every creature is possessed of will, and therefore in its measure has the power to choose. And though in their native planes all creatures are supplied with nourishment from the ethers of their planes, there came a time when the creatures on the planes of protoplast, of earth, of plant, beast, and man forgot how to see with eyes of soul. And because they could no longer see the planes of soul, they gave all importance to the realms of flesh and sensation, and in doing so, forgot their purpose. For then the will of man, along with that of earth, plant, protoplast, and beast, became a sluggish will, as the beings of these lower planes turned from their purpose of perfecting their souls, and strove only to attend to the joys and pains of the carnal self. And so the ethers of the protoplast, the earth, the plant, the beast, and man began to vibrate very slowly. The ethers became more dense, and all the creatures of these planes were clothed with coarser garbs, the garbs of flesh which men can see, and thus this coarser manifest, which men call physical, appeared. And this is what is called the fall of man. But man fell not alone, for protoplast and earth and plant and beast were all included in the fall. However, the angels and the cherubim fell not. Their wills were ever strong, and so they held the ethers of their planes in harmony with God. But when the ethers of these lower planes reached the rate of atmosphere, and all the creatures who once fed on the ethers of their planes then had to get their food from atmosphere, then the conflict came. And then that which the finite man has called survival of the best became the law. The stronger ate the bodies of the weaker manifests, and here is where the carnal law of evolution had its rise. And now man in his utter shamelessness strikes down and eats the beasts. The beast consumes the plant. The plant thrives on the earth, and the earth absorbs the protoplast. However, in yonder kingdom of the soul, this carnal evolution is not known. And the great gift from God to man is the gift of life, which each one may choose to use to learn how once again to see with eyes of soul, and thereby restore the heritage of man, to bring him back to his estate that he has lost, when he again will live upon the ethers of his native plane. For the time will come when all these 7 manifests will be absorbed, and man and beast and plant and earth and protoplast will all be redeemed. And though finite man, who cannot see with eyes of soul, may look upon his fall with fleshy eyes and think that he has failed, one who sees with eyes of spirit knows that all that is and ever will be is perfect and divine, because all that is and all that occurs exists only to return humanity to its divine perfection on the planes of ether. And let it be known that man is divine. For man, like every other thought of God, was but a seed that held within itself the potencies of God, just as the seed of any plant of earth holds deep within itself the attributes of every part of that plant. So spirit man, as seed of God, held deep within himself the attributes of every part of God. Now seeds are perfect as the source from which they come. But seeds do not germinate in light. They do not grow until they find the darkness of soil and hide themselves away from light. Similarly, man was evolved a seed of everlasting life. But in the ethers of the triune God, the light was far too great for the seed of man to grow. For just as a fish born in water cannot know the substance that surrounds it, so too was man blind to the perfect oneness of God into which he had been born. Thus man needed darkness so that he may come to see the light. And so he would create for himself a world of darkness, a darkness that would become so complete that it would one day inspire him to seek a brighter way. And it was for thus that man left the spirit plane and sought the soil of carnal life, where in the darksomeness of earth he would find a place where he could germinate and grow. And grow he would in the darkness of his own ignorance. For bound to earth, man with his carnal eyes saw only the physical, and thinking it real, he turned his attention away from spirit and strived only to achieve in the material. Having forgotten his soul and eternal self, man clung to his material body, thinking that it was all he had. And it was in his struggle to survive under the carnal rule of survival of the fittest that man first learned to fear, as he chose to fight for his life. And because he struggled against all living things for his survival, man in his conflict forgot the soul of protoplast and earth, of plant and beast, and thus the oneness of life was lost to him. And in his separation, his fear deepened, and man learned to hate. And thus the darkness grew. Oh, woe to man when he forgot the soul of all living things, for it was then that he forgot his purpose. And if man is ever to redeem his lost estate, he must turn inside and seek there to find the light of purpose which he hath lost, or forever be consumed by darkness. And thus, in the encroaching shadows of his increasing fear, ignorance, and selfishness, man strived to find his reason for being. But having lost the light of spirit, he could not see that all things exist to help others reach new heights on the planes of soul. Nor could he see that the strong were called upon to help the weak, and the wise to show the way. And so, rather than using his gifts to be a gardener of the earth, man turned his mind and might to being its conqueror. And as he gained more for himself in the material world, the spoils of his conquests taught him greed, selfishness, and pride. And through the gratification of his senses, his attachment to the material world grew strong, and the darkness enveloped him. For the brilliance of the planes of soul cannot be purchased with fame, riches, or an alluring form, nor can they be won through force of arm or military might. For the heights of soul are not reached through greed, selfishness, pride, or hate. It is love that brings one home. Yet as time went on and man gained more for himself, his love of power and his will to be the master of his world blinded him to the power of love. And in his lust for pleasure and success, man cast aside his spiritual purpose as he stopped living to master himself and lived only to become the master of others. And thus man's happiness became dependent on the suffering of others. And so as man gained temporary riches for himself in the physical, his eternal soul grew small and withered, and the blackness became complete. However, in accordance with divine law, the darkness of man's past has allowed the seed of God in man to germinate. And like a shoot pushing its way from darkness to light, so too are many amongst humanity turning their wills from the empty pursuits of material gain in search of a deeper purpose for existence. Thus it will be in man's choice that he will be redeemed. For just as the fall of man was caused by his will to attain in the material, so too will man be redeemed by returning his gaze inwards towards the spiritual. And it is for this reason that creative spirits gave to man a will, so that he may choose and thereby demonstrate the nature of his soul. For with the gift of life man may attain the greatest heights or sink to the deepest depths. For what he wills to gain, he has the power to gain. And even though man has given up his birthright just to gratify his lower self, through will, wisdom, and love, he may once again regain his lost estate. But he must do it in a conflict that cannot be told in words. And this conflict will not be fought and won on the battlefields of man, but rather it will be won in the hearts and souls of humanity. For just as a plant requires both light and dark to grow, so too does man require both peace and conflict. For in every conflict man gains wisdom, and with every victory over greed, hate, and ignorance he attains to greater heights. With every day he finds new duties and new cares, and so in the whirl of many-sided conflicts man is placed where he must strive to free himself. For in the heart of conflict, man will learn to see with eyes of soul that although events are many in a nation's life, and in the life of man, that are not pleasant for the time, in the end the truth appears. Whatever comes is for the best. And when man learns to see that everything serves a spiritual purpose and is therefore perfect, the seed of man will have taken root and grown full well. And thus the tree of human life will rise from the soil of earthy things and under natural law reach up to perfect form. But let it be known that there are no supernatural acts of God to lift a man from carnal life to spirit blessedness. For the human grows as grows the plant, drawing nourishment from the challenges and triumphs granted through the gift of life, as a plant draws nourishment from the sun and the soil. And in due time it receives all that is needed to push it through the darkness and into light. And just as the tree needs earth, air, water, and sun to reach its heights, so too does man require the support of four friends as he strives to reach new heights on the plains of soul. Those friends are will and faith and helpfulness and love. For that which one wills to do, he has the power to do. And one who has faith that the journey is worth taking will persevere, and will be able to endure and even enjoy the dangers, pains, and hardships along the way, knowing that every experience brings one closer to their goal. And though many think the spiritual path to be a lonely one, there is no lonely pilgrim on the way to self-perfection, for a selfish faith leads not to light. And thus anyone trying to attain the heights for themselves will, in time, fall short of their goal. For one may only gain the heights by helping others gain the heights. and so the strong are called upon to help the weak, and the wise to show the way. And though pulled along to ever greater reaches by those three sturdy friends, will, faith, and helpfulness, the sure-footed friend who leads the way to true spirit life is love, pure, unselfish love. For when one learns to see that life gives to humanity as it does the lilies of the field, and that every being and event in every moment of existence provides nourishment for the soul, then with eyes of spirit one may see the truth that all is love, and love is all. And in so seeing the divine grace and spiritual purpose of all things, one's heart may be filled with the redeeming light of love divine, which is capable of lifting the race of man from the darkened den of carnal things to the highest heights of spirit life. And thus have masterminds throughout all time sought to learn the mystery of how this love lives in the heart, so that in so learning they may live that love, and thereby help restore humanity's lost estate. For truly man never has been left without a beacon light to guide, and he has ever had a lighted lamp in hand that he may see the dangerous rocks, the turbid streams and treacherous pits. And the holy ones themselves have judged that when men have needed added light, a master soul has come to earth to show the boundlessness of love. This universal love, spoken of by sages throughout all time, is called the Christ, whose story reveals the possibilities of man and the power of love to redeem and raise one's soul to the highest heights. For it is by understanding what the Christ is, and following the symbols given to us through the life and death of a person named Jesus, that one may learn the secret of how selfless love lives in the heart, and thereby be redeemed. The Christ is the child, the only begotten child of the Almighty Father, Mother God. And as God the Father is known as divine will, and God the Mother divine wisdom, so too is Christ God, the God of divine love. For through love all life was manifest, and through love all things were done. And naught was done in forming worlds or peopling worlds without the Christ. Now Christ, which is the living light and consciousness of universal love, pervades all spaces of infinity, and so there is no end to love. For at the moment of creation, from the great heart of love, unnumbered spirits were sent forth to demonstrate the height, the depth, the width, the boundlessness of love. To every world and star and moon and sun, a master spirit of this love divine was sent, and all were full anointed with the oil of helpfulness, and each became Christ. Thus through Christ, the protoplast, the earth, the plant, the beast, the man, the angel, and the cherubim took up their stations on their planes of life. And through Christ they are preserved, and if they fall, it is Christ's love that lifts them up. And if they sell themselves to greed, fear, and hatred, it is their willingness to remember how to love as Christ loves that redeems. Thus, in the boundless blessedness of love, man was made the Lord of protoplast, of earth, of plant, of beast, and Christ proclaimed, "Man shall have full dominion over everything that is upon these planes of life." And it was so. And Christ, who gave the lordship unto man, declared that he must rule by love. But men grew cruel, and they lost their power to rule. And protoplast and earth and plant and beast became at enmity with man, and he lost his heritage. But Christ was present to redeem, For if man could once again remember the great mystery of how Christ lives in the heart, and in so learning demonstrate his ability to love all things as he loved himself, he would be full restored to his position of caretaker of the earth and planes of soul. But man had lost his consciousness of right. He could no longer comprehend the boundlessness of Christed love. He could see naught but self and things of self. But Christ was there to seek the lost and save. And so, in order to help humanity comprehend the mighty spirit of love divine, the Christ of earth made itself manifest to human eyes and ears by birthing its consciousness in some pure person, well prepared by many lives to be a fit abiding place of love. Thus the Christ, through the words and deeds of Jesus, showed humanity the power of selfless love to save. For the man called Jesus gave his life as a pattern for humanity, so that those willing to reach the height of perfect soul may do so by following the symbols of his life. And for this reason he said 1,000 times, "I came to show the possibilities of man. What I have done all men may do, and what I am all men shall be." And thus the Christ came to earth to reveal, through the patterns and symbols of Jesus' life, the mystery of how selfless love lives in the heart. For Jesus, seeing with eyes of soul, knew that the only riches worth attaining with the gift of life were those that led to the perfection of spirit. And therefore he did not fight or strive to attain for the physical self. For he saw the suffering of the world that was caused by those who strived for self. And seeing with eyes of spirit, he also knew that it is the suffering that one causes that counts against him on the spirit side of life. For one's eternal spirit is never harmed by the word or deed of others on the physical plane. Indeed, the only damage done to one's soul is the damage one does themselves by causing the suffering of others. It is for this reason that Christ taught that if one is struck on the face, it is far better to offer the other cheek than to strike back in anger. For the body is merely a temporary shell for the eternal soul, and thus it is better to receive the physical pains caused by the blows of life than it would be to suffer the pains of soul caused by striking back and causing another harm. Thus the Christ, through Jesus, faced the trials and challenges of life with love and faith, and saw that all of creation has a purpose, that through their being all things exist to help others attain heights of soul. And in all of existence he saw that there are two types of souls: those who through love give of themselves willingly to help others attain those heights, and those who strive only to attain for themselves. However, Christ in his infinite love saw that the pain, hardships, and struggles created by those who strive for self served an essential purpose in God's divine plan. For the suffering caused through the conquests of the selfish was needed to push those who were willing to love to new heights, guiding them to love's higher planes of compassion and forgiveness. For it is through one's ability to forgive others that they themselves are forgiven. And thus, like Christ, anyone who learns to forgive and see the spiritual purpose of all things in existence can learn to be loving and thankful for all that is as one. And with this perfect love, one may follow the narrow path and pattern of Christ's life, which it is said all will walk one day, and which all must pass through who wish to attain the heights of soul. And thus, anyone wishing to follow in the footsteps of Christ to the perfection of soul must follow the 6 symbols revealed in the life of Jesus, which will serve as lamps to light the way on Christ's narrow path. Like Christ, each person must bear their cross, facing the trials of life with love and faith, accepting that whatever comes serves the Spirit and is for the best. And seeing thus with eyes of spirit, one will know the illusion of the physical world, and will thereby be free from the hopes and fears attached to things of flesh. And thus one may rise above desire, emotions, and even self. For when one has attained a spiritual wisdom, a spiritual will, and a spiritual love capable of freeing them from self, then love divine will move that soul to give its life as a willing sacrifice to help others attain those same heights of spirit. For one's choice to live a spiritual life, seeking an understanding of oneself and the world that will allow them to love all as one, will serve as a pattern and symbol that will lead others who are looking for the way to peace and perfection. Just as the depth of love that Jesus showed to those who crucified him reveals the secret of the Christine love that all who wish to follow in his path must find. For though Jesus suffered tremendous physical pain on the cross, he could see that his tormentors suffered more in their ignorance to spirit. And so seeing, he offered his love to them, so that eventually they might see the way. And thus he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And having thus surrendered one's personal will and desires for the self to the divine will, the old self will be laid to rest and entombed in what some call the 3 days of darkness, through which time one is given the opportunity to look at their soul with inner eyes and reconcile themselves with all that they are and have been throughout their days. And having thus faced the darkness with faith, love, wisdom, and forgiveness, one will raise their spirit eyes to face the dawn of the glorious resurrection, when the light of a new sun will cast its brilliant rays across the surface of a new world. And then the flesh of man will be transformed into the flesh of man as God. And when this is done, the Christ will take possession of the soul, lifting it to the highest planes, where the soul itself is dissolved in the divine light of the triune God. And then the work is done, and man and God are one. Thus these 6 symbols made visible through Christ in the life of Jesus revealed the 6 guiding lights that one must follow if they wish to walk Christ's narrow path to perfection of soul and selfless love. But man forgot so soon, and so Christ must manifest itself again and then again. And thus, ever since man took his place in form of flesh, the Christine consciousness has been born into some pure person at the turn of every age, to once again light the way to perfect love for man. However, it is said that the age that now approaches, the age of Aquarius, will be the perfect age, and that it will be the age of man and the age of faith. For in the last age, man was not far enough advanced to live by faith, as he could not comprehend the things he could not see. But through the blessings of the Aquarian age, the human race will see without the aid of carnal eyes, will hear the soundless sound, and will know the Spirit God. And the consciousness of Christ, which in the previous ages was born only into a chosen few, will, in the age of Aquarius, be born into all who choose to see with eyes of soul, and open their hearts to love divine, and thereby be perfected. A perfect human being. To bring before the triune God a being such as this was nature made. This consummation is the highest revelation of the mystery of life. And when all the essences of carnal things have been transmuted into soul, and all the essences of soul have been returned to holy breath, and man is made a perfect God, then the drama of creation will conclude, and all will be as one. Amen.